practically, how do we work out of a debt? It's as the Bible says, we're almost like trapped like a bird. And how do we free ourselves from this trap?
Getting into debt is like an addiction.
Okay.
It is like alcohol or drugs. Like you are in it, but you think you can always get out of it.
Okay.
And you always are in denial mode. It's an addiction.
Okay.
And if you look at anyone in debt, they always believe that they're just a step away from getting out.
Okay.
And they're actually getting more and more and more into it.
Fool's paradise.
They live in denial.
Okay.
It's an addiction.
Is that something which you have seen in people, that they don't want to recognize the problem too?
This particular issue, I believe that not enough people to address it, and that is an avenue, I think, which Satan can
just
use.
Plays it.
And
Okay. We just think it's a lifestyle issue. We think cut down your spending, you can get out of debt. But somewhere you're bringing a very deeper dimension of a spiritual bondage.
Let's say, for example, I have a salary of 10,000 rupees, and my spending, that is my rent, my education for my children, food on the table, a normal expenditure for a family is 9,000 rupees. I'm able to save 1,000 rupees. Now next year, inflation, which is simply the rise of cost, is 10%. So my cost moves from 9,000 to 9,900 next year.
Correct.
Now let's say I don't get a salary increase the next year. My salary is 10,000, my cost is now 10,000 virtually. So I don't have any savings, which is okay. But next year, imagine you have another 10% rise. Your expenses go to 11,000.
Correct.
You've got only a 5% salary raise. So your salary is now 10,500. Your expenditure is 11,000. Very difficult for a family to cut down on expenditure. You can't.
That's a brilliant point, Glenn, because you're breaking a big myth that we were always taught, live within your means.
Yeah.
Now you're saying live below your means. What you're saying, we thought, parents said don't live beyond your means, try to live within your means. But inflation is not even living within your means.
That's right.
You constantly live below your means. So what percentage as a fund management person would you say, to prepare yourself, do I always live 20% below my means, 30% below my means? What is the balance of savings to, investment to kind of judicial spending? Can you throw some light?
Yeah, I think the first step is to realize that we are battling inflation.
Okay.
Right? If the government says inflation is 6%, we can safely assume it's 10% by the time it reaches the consumer, the retailer.
Okay.
So, when you are planning your expenditure, please plan for a 10% increase. I'll tell you why people get into a debt trap. Not because they don't recognize inflation. They believe that the salary will keep increasing 20% every year. And when the company goes through a bad time and there's no salary increase, what you have done is you built your lifestyle expecting this 20% increase. So a guy who's in a 1-bedroom house moves to a 2-bedroom house.
Assuming that he'll get an
Assuming
increase.
that his increase will happen.
Okay.
And then when it doesn't happen, it becomes so difficult for you to move back to a 1-bedroom house.
Correct.
You take your kid from a good matriculation school and put him in an international school. Then you can't pay his fees. Can you bring him back? You can't.
You can't.
So very, very important to understand that you have to build your lifestyle assuming that you will not get an X amount of salary.
So in practical terms, how do I address this? Say that one or two things. When I spoke to you last time, you said, there was something about you left your job at one point and you had a financial reserves of 6 months.
Exactly.
So that is in the eventuality of you losing a job. So one is not just inflation; it's also losing a job.
That's right.
So what would you advise as how to beat the inflation? How do I, some of us don't do this calculation. So we just kind of, how do I know what is the ballpark figure? Let's say I'm earning 30,000 rupees. So should I say I should live, spend about 20,000, put 10,000 rupees aside, have like a 30,000 into 6 as a reserve. So, what is the math that we can work with?
I think you nailed it there by saying that, you need to, when you have those surpluses, when you're getting those 20% salary increases, instead of spending that, you save that. You save that.
So you're saying, but there would be an erosion from inflation already.
Because when you start saving, please ensure that you save and you invest wisely.